Good evening. Welcome to the Dominance Academy. I'm your host, Mr. Justin. And tonight we've got a show about how to set up a Dom sub dynamic. And before we get into that, I'm going to play the previously botched commercial that I made. It's similar to my intro, but it's something I'm using for some advertising purposes. So here we go.
Is your sex life stagnant? Do you have no respect from women? Welcome to the Dominance Academy, your gateway to revitalizing your masculine identity. Rooted in timeless values and traditional roles, the Dominance Academy offers practical solutions, expert guidance, and unwavering support to help you unravel the challenges of intimacy and forge a deeper connection with yourself. You will invigorate your masculine leadership and confidence, which will have a profound effect on your romantic life. Your professor, Mr. Justin, is a leader in the realms of sexual education, relationship dynamics, and the arcane arts of BDSM. His curriculum teaches the mysteries behind polarity and structured power dynamics, weaving them into the fabric of flourishing relationships. The results when dealing with women is you will have intense influence over how they behave around you, fucking their minds, hearts and bodies into joyous submission. Join me at the Dominance Academy and restore your identity while discovering the joy of a fulfilling masculine presence. It's time to step into your role as a leader and reclaim your life.
All right, and there it is. Glad it played well. What's up, Phil Brad? Yeah, so I've got a little show planned for you guys around setting up a DS dynamic. All right, because I know a lot of you guys are active in the dating community. Maybe some of you have girlfriends. Maybe you're fucking a couple girls here and there, and maybe even you get into some kinky play, and that's cool, right? That's all fine and good. I love that, and but understand that kinky play does not mean you have a dom sub dynamic. A dom sub dynamic is rife with communication. There's very little, if any, assumptions made, and because we know that can get you into a lot of trouble. Sometimes it get you in physical trouble, emotional trouble, psychological trouble. It can put either party into a compromising position, and we don't want that, right? Because we want to learn, we want to grow, and we want to have fun, all right? And so the way around this is through having a lot of clear communication. So it starts off with their interest, all right? So actually, it starts off with your education. So if you're interested in becoming a dominant, all right, or expressing your innate proclivity toward dominance, but you don't really know how, I would suggest learning, right? There's a couple of ways you can go about this. You can get yourself a mentor, so you can hire me if you like, or there's a number of doms that you can interview to see if they would take you on as a mentee, or because I think person to person is the best way to go about it. And then you should read a lot. There's a number of good websites out there. There's a number of good blogs, and there's a few good books. There's actually a lot of shitty books out there. So if you, let's say, go on Amazon and you look up books on dominance, you look up books on BDSM, you're going to find books that really only touch the surface of things, and they're going to be just about the sexual stuff. They're just going to be about the play stuff. You're like, well, if you want to dominate, learn how to tie her up, right? Learn or be able to teach her these poses and things of that nature. And the fact of the matter is that dominance doesn't show up in any one particular way. It doesn't have a look. It doesn't have a particular style. It doesn't have a particular set of activities. like I know a dominant who is wheelchair bound. So, and he has 3 submissives. So it's not something that requires certain types of behavior or looks or words. Okay. What it requires is a certain mentality and a certain spirit. And it's kind of hard to describe, but it's a place of balanced integrity and largely control over your own impulses. So it's going to be very difficult to dominate if you are driven by sexual pleasure. If you must have sexual pleasure, if this is something that you crave, it's going to be really hard, right? You have to be able to control this aspect of yourself. I'm not saying that it should be void within you, but it's something that you should control. It's very important, okay? Because you cannot lead if you are being led, and you can be led by impulses. So you have to have control of your impulses. So having a lot of self-control and having knowledge is the best starting point when it comes to domination, because like I said, it's not a set of activities, it's not a certain set of toys or whatever. It's not anything you say, it's who you are and how you express yourself. And how that's expressed comes across in a myriad of ways. This is what helps set up the structure of your dynamic. And then it also is what allows you to negotiate, all right? And so you want to be able to come to this situation with a little bit of knowledge. Now, you can both come to this as like a couple of noobs, and that's totally fine. Like, say a boyfriend and girlfriend, and you're like, hey, like, let's learn about this stuff. Let's get into this stuff. That's perfectly fine. Where both people are going into it with open minds, their cups are empty, and they're just like, hey, let's do this and let's learn. That's a fantastic way to start as well. But if you're, say, just meeting women online, you are dating casually, you're sleeping with women here and there, and you want to bring dominance and submission into your lifestyle, then it's something you're going to have to educate yourself on first, so that you have some sort of foundation and some way in which you can guide the interactions. So with the topic around impulse control is that you don't want to take things to the point of wanting to get into sexual activity right away. If the vibe is there, if the connection is there, if the puzzle pieces fit together, and by that I mean your kinks and your desires and the way you think and the way you move, your way that you go about a lot of things matches up with theirs, and they're open to it. That's what I mean by puzzle pieces fitting together. Then you can get into a place of negotiation, and you can get into a place of learning about them, right? Because you should have a solid understanding of you should have a solid understanding of yourself, okay? And so this is really where you have to start off. And then there's an interview process, okay? This is very important for you to understand where they're coming from. Do they have any traumas? Does the potential submissive have any traumas? So really, it's kind of like you're this body of knowledge, right? Who's willing to share this experience with another person, okay? To bestow this upon another person, and you're inviting them in. And so your position has to be very relaxed, it has to be very calibrated, and it has to be from a place of knowledge and guidance, okay? It cannot be from impulse and knee-jerk reactions and like, oh my gosh, she's so hot, and like, ooh, she's interested and she wants to do this. Like, you have to control yourself, and you have to relax. Let her come to a gentle understanding of who you are and the way you like to go about things. All right. And so part of this is understanding her kinks, if she has any kinks. All right. Now, of course, this doesn't have to be gender specific, but just for the sake of conversation, I'm assuming the dom is male and the sub is female. All right. But of course, there are female doms and there are male subs. But it works both ways. So So you have to understand like where they're coming from. Like, do they have fears involved? Do they have any shame around sexuality? Do they have any traumas? Were they ever punished as a child? And how were they punished? All right. Do they have, say, trauma around spanking? And let's say you've got a spanking kink. How's that going to work out? Okay. So these are things that you gotta have to sort out first. You have to find out what their likes and dislikes are. Okay. Because this allows you the pathway moving forward if you were to set up a dynamic of reward and punishment systems. Okay. So if they say, well, I really like fine chocolates and really good tea, and I absolutely dislike a messy bed and I don't know, smelly socks, right? Like these are just things that they're like, oh my gosh, I can't stand this shit. And like people have their things, you know what I mean? Then this is like, okay, and you mark all this stuff down, right? You have them create a list of their likes and dislikes, or you just gather this through conversation and you start marking these things down. And so for future, if you were to start a dynamic, then you know that, say within the protocols, things you're trying to teach them, and like, are they on schedule? And are they doing the things that you're having them, teaching them to do? Then you can reward them with the things that you already know that they like. Or if they start screwing up, you can then say, okay, your punishment is that you're not going to make your bed today. You're going to come home from work and your bed is going to be crazy. And I want picture evidence. I want you to turn on your video when you walk into your home and go straight to your bedroom and show me the bed that's been crazy all day long. And then set up your phone. And then, because you've done this properly to my request, I'll give you the permission to make it. So it's something along those lines. Okay. And that's only for like a particular type of Dom, right? So, in my video series for my students in my library, I'm putting together some information about the types of Doms. All right. And, the first one that we go over is the control type. All right. And within all DS dynamics, there's always going to be some element of control, but the Doms who really get turned on, like mentally, right? I'm not talking about like getting boners or anything, but I'm saying like just mentally, they get turned on, they get charged up from having control. They will have more of this in the dynamic, whereas others will have less control. And so if he's got like more control desires in there, then a lot more is going to be managed in the dynamic. And he's going to want to have finer and finer detail. All right. He's going to be more detailed about how things move. Now, is the sub also aroused by control? Do they get off by having things controlled in their life? So if you find out that they do, and you're like, well, how do you feel about certain aspects of your life being controlled? Right? And then you have a discussion about that. Well, what would you be willing to give up control on? And you put out some suggestions based on the things that you would like. So let's say you like the idea of choosing their underwear and their clothing for the day every single day. And this doesn't feel like a chore to you. You like this. And you bring that up as a suggestion. How does that feel to you? Does that turn you on? Because there's no sense in doing something that isn't fun or pleasurable for both parties involved. It doesn't make any sense. So if they're like, yeah, that sounds really arousing to me. I love the feeling that you're choosing what I'm going to be wearing every day. And there's various ways that this can come into play. It can be controlling around speech, around their daily habits, their daily routines. It can be around their diet. It can be around exercise. It can be around their clothing. It can be around their hobbies, how their time is spent when it's not in like, say, if they have a job, when it's not at work, what does she do with her time, her free time, right? How is that spent? Anything that she's learning, right? Is she taking on like particular personal studies? Is she learning a new language? Is she reading up about the history of, some country, the history of Spain or what have you? There's so many things in people's lives, and it's like, well, how much do you want to control? And also like sexuality, right? Some women feel very empowered by giving away control over their sexuality. When they're allowed to, say, have sex, when they're allowed to masturbate, when they're allowed to come, if they're allowed to masturbate, right? Is this treated as a reward? Can the dom say, I want you to masturbate whenever they tell them to? You're like, regardless of if the sub is feeling horny or not. It's like, no. On your lunch break, you're going to go into the bathroom. You're going to masturbate for 3 minutes. And no, you're not allowed to come. Right? Something along those lines. So control, like I said, is always going to be an aspect in the dynamic. It's just a matter of how much. How much do you want? How much do they want? And, if it's offset, then you're going to have to either decide, well, is this not a good fit, or is there room for negotiation? Like how important is it to you to have control over a certain aspect, right? How important because maybe they want you to have control over something that you're not interested in. And it's like, well, how can we kind of find a middle ground where it's not too stressful for me and you get the enjoyment out of it that you want, right? Because there's no sense, managing something that does nothing for you. It's going to feel like a chore. And then you're not really going to want to do it after a while. Okay. And so this extends throughout, and you want to have a lot of communication around these things. And that's the key to it. This is what allows you to lead. This is what allows you to guide and have influence. And, and it will create, what's really interesting about these things is that it creates a bond between two people. Unlike any other. It's not like being in any other kind of relationship. And what's also interesting is that it doesn't necessarily have to be sexual. There's plenty of dom-sub relationships where they do not touch each other sexually. Oh shit. Somebody's at the door. Hold on. All right, sorry about that. So the point is that you have to have a lot of communication. You have to cover a lot of bases. Okay. So I'm working on like some worksheets around this sort of thing. And so it's like, well, what do you want to have control over, right? And there's certain areas where I, kind of broke it down into the basic categories. Okay. There's verbal. Okay. And this is basically like where rules of engagement and rules around what's expected and so on. And so there's verbal there. So this is, what you want to see, like this is coming from the dominant side, what you want to see throughout the day. Like, do you want to have do you expect a good morning? Is there like a morning ritual involved? How is manners a thing? Okay. Like for me, manners is a very big deal. So like for me, before and after comments or questions, I expect to see sir or daddy. Can I have ice cream today, daddy? Right? Or sir, I have a question. That sort of thing. Always using please and thank you. Gratitude is also big for me. So verbal can be just whatever it is that's important to you as far as how someone speaks to you as the dominant. So that's something that you can sort out. Physical, right? So, what there's fitness, there's diet, there's daily routines, there's learning submissive postures, right? So there's a number of traditional postures, and they all have names or numbers. And some dominants really want their subs to learn these postures. So you can say, assume, posture number 4, and they know exactly what that is because they've memorized all of the postures, and you just tell them what that is. And there's a number of them, right? It's like on their knees, say like one of them, a really common one is on their knees with their knees spread and their hands on their knees, but the palms upward. And they're sitting very straight up with the back straight and the head is cast down and the eyes are at the floor. Like, this is a very, very common submissive posture that is taught. And there's a whole slew of them. Not a lot, maybe I think 10. I think there's 10 common positions. So that's one of them. Mental, right? Submission studies. Okay, so you want them to learn about submission, right? And there's a number of books out there that are geared just towards submissives. There's a lot of websites, there's a lot of blogs, there's a lot of podcasts, audio podcasts more so than the video ones, like a YouTube channel. But there are some, I think. Daily affirmations. This is all on the mental side. So studying about submission, daily affirmations, are you or they into hypnosis, like either hypnotherapy or erotic hypnosis, journaling. Journaling is very important for both the dominant and the submissive so that you can track your progress, as you are learning and growing, each of you. And what's typical is that, like, at the end of each week, the submissive is to hand over the journal to the dominant to review. It's not necessary, but this is just something that I'm aware of that is pretty common. Morning meditations and things of that nature. Of course, there's the sexual training. So if there's things that the dominant wants the submissive to learn sexually, say like learning how to deep throat, anything really to please him that she doesn't know how to do very well or specific to him, this is something that that she needs to learn and that he needs to teach her. Okay. Goals. So that's another category of like, what are the submissive's personal goals? All right. And the goals could be something in fitness. The goals could be something in education. The goals could be a certain type of sport that she wants to learn or get better at. A whole host of things, right? What her goals are. You should have an understanding of what are actual punishments, which goes back to understanding what their likes and dislikes are. Okay. Punishments, right? And punishments are things that aren't exactly punishing, right? Because the goal is not to have the submissive feel remorse. That's not the goal. The goal is to kind of have like pretend punishment, right? Where it's like, let's say spanking is not deemed as a punishing activity. All right. And she does something that is, going over the line, but it's a line that you're okay that she crosses. And then you kind of play along and saying like, oh, you've been a bad girl. Like, you're going to get a spanking later. That sort of thing. And it's understood because she's into it. She likes having this pretend punishment because she enjoys the mental, emotional, and the physical things that come of that. Okay. And then the equal puzzle piece is the dominant likes the other side of that. He likes to play that role where, and it's not all the time. It's just from time to time, there's these makeshift acting, right? Where you're just playing out a small scene and the two of you are just playing these little characters and it's fun, right? Again, that's the whole idea. Rewards. So again, like I mentioned, understanding what the what gets them going, and it could be very big things or it could be very small things. This is understanding them on multiple levels, okay? Because rewards are really important, because it helps them understand. It helps them understand that you're paying attention to them, okay? And it makes their behavior like much more impactful, okay, when they've earned a certain something. And it could be anything from, say they want like some quality time with you, right? That's non-sexual, and they just want to like snuggle on the couch and watch a movie, okay? If you were to just do that, which you could, right? Because I mean, you should like the person that you're working with. You could do that just without anything, but it's much more impactful if you know this is something that's very important to them, that that they them have earned, and you make it known. And you say, listen, you've earned this, and because you've been doing really good with this, that, and the other for X amount of time, you've earned some of this quality time that I know you love so much. And so you can pick out whatever movie you want, and we'll get some popcorn or get some, some good tea or drinks or whatever, and we can sit and watch whatever movie you want, and we'll just snuggle on the couch, and you'll have, undivided attention and snuggling and all that shit that you love. Okay, we'll get some soft blankets, whatever it is. And that's going to be way more powerful than just doing it just because. Okay. So like I said, it's understanding them on a deeper level. Okay. And then of course, understanding limits. Okay. Understanding limits is really, really important. And this goes into, understanding their past, understanding their traumas, and is this something to be worked through, or is it absolutely just do not fucking go there? Okay, it's so bad or so traumatic or so painful or so fearful that it's like, you know what, this isn't even a place to walk towards, so it's just a no-go. All right, limits don't mean automatically we need to explore this. Okay, you want to ask and say, hey, I see that's a limit of yours, right? Like, let's say the person, let's say the submissive just does not like degrading language. It makes them feel terrible, like to be called like, like a filthy slut or something along those lines. Okay. Like that's very tame in the world of degradation, but it just triggers the hell out of them. It just makes them feel awful. You say to them like, listen, I see that this is or I understand that this is a limit of yours. Would you be interested in having a conversation about why this is a limit of yours? Right? Because another part of BDSM is growth and experiencing freedom from the self. Okay. And when we have things like this, and this is a justifiable limit, it's an indication that there might be something there to explore, that if it were to be healed or removed in a healthy and calibrated way, that it could provide the individual with even more freedom, right? And there was something there. There was a sore or abscess that was dealt with, and now you are not just someone that she's having fun with. You're now an anchor. You're now a source of healing, right? Which increases the trust, which increases the vulnerability, which increases the submission, which also increases what you are required to manage. Okay. Because the more trust someone gives you, the more responsibility you have. All right. So this sort of lifestyle is not cut out for everyone. Right. Okay. Hey, Tristan, good to see you, buddy. You're a new face here. Just came onto your live. I've been binging your videos lately. Great content. Do you have any tips for starting a dynamic with no sex until marriage? I'm waiting until marriage to have sex. All right, cool. Well, my question would be, are you waiting until marriage to have sex because you can't get sex, and this is like a justifiable thing that you can say to yourself because it feels better than saying like, I have problems getting women? Or do you have no problem and you know you could bed women, but you're choosing not to because of certain principles or religion or something along those lines. Because it's one thing to have the power and say no, and to have no power and still say no, right? One of them is a very strong choice, and the other one is a choice by default. So just something to, play around with in your own mind, and you know the truth of the matter. But anyways, to answer your question, yes, starting a dynamic, whether you're dom or sub, you need to educate yourself, and you can go to the beginning of this episode and explain a little bit about that. And it requires either getting a mentor, that would be best, mentor that you trust, and you interview them basically, just to get to know more about them, because there's so many different types of doms. It's kind of like if you're wanting to, it's like if you're wanting to, what's it called? Like learn how to fight, right? Even if you choose one particular style, it doesn't mean that they're a very good teacher, or if it's the particular style that you're looking for. And it's also important to, read. It's really important to read a lot. A great book I can recommend is called The Heart of Dominance by Anton Fullman. Yeah, that's his name. And this is probably the best book that I've read on the topic. It's only for dominance. So if you're submissive, it would be helpful, but it's not going to teach you about being a submissive. But it's very good for dominance. Like I said, one of the best that I've ever read on the matter. And this is the best starting point. It's also good to understand what your wants, your needs, and your desires are. If you have any kinks, what your limits might be, what your turnoffs might be, if you're into control and how much control, what you would like to have control over and why. It can get pretty involved. Like it's really a roadmap to figuring yourself out on a pretty profound level. And it's not necessary, but I find it to be quite fulfilling. Okay. One second. Oh. Yes. I didn't check in with my monkey. So anyways, so yeah, that's the best starting point. It's best to have an education base, a knowledge base, and then you can move into these things. That's because you don't want to come into things blind. Okay. And so there's a lot of blogs, there's a lot of websites. There's this guy, Tristan, do some research on him. If I can remember, I don't remember his website. I think it's called the Crow Academy, and the dom's name is Arcane. And this guy is incredibly knowledgeable. Like, this guy is awesome. Just the level of knowledge that he has in BDSM and like tons of other shit. Like the dude's really great. Okay. But yeah, check him out. His name's Arcane. His website, I believe, is Crow Academy or The Crow Academy, something along those lines. I've wanted to get him on the show with his submissive to do an interview, but actually I should reach out to him again. There was just life things getting in the way, and we weren't able to really relax and get into a good schedule. But anyways, I'll reach out to him again. But yeah, there's a lot to it. Okay, it's not, starting a dom sub dynamic is not the easiest thing in the world. It takes patience. It takes some education, and it requires coming in slowly, right? Because you certainly just don't want to get wrapped up with the wrong type of person. Okay, and they don't want to get wrapped up with the wrong type of person. And this is why it's so important to have your kinks and your thirst under control, because it can lead you astray. It can lead you to making poor decisions. It can lead you to putting those things in the forefront instead of leading. Okay, leading and guidance should be the primary drive as a dominant. Okay, not fulfilling your own kinks. Okay, it's just the way it is. And it sounds like you're serving, but you are, but only in the sense that they've earned the position to receive it. Okay, so it requires having great confidence in yourself. It requires believing in yourself. It requires letting go of your insecurities. It requires dealing with your self-doubt and coming into a place where you trust your own judgment. Okay, and if you're not, all right, it's completely okay to say, hey, I'm new to this, but I'm learning. Right? It doesn't make you any less of a man or less of a dominant. It actually makes you smart, instead of trying to fake it till you make it and you figure shit out. That's not how it's done. Right? It's perfectly okay to say, hey, I'm really interested in this. I've only been studying it for a couple of months, but I want to learn. I want to take things further. Right? If that's all right with you, you can come along and I will be patient with you. Right? And then you can give them resources to study and things of that nature. Tristan, another thing to do is to check out, at least it's sex and kink related, is go to the BDSM.org website and take the long form version of the quiz. It'll take a little while, but it's quite good. And then at the end, it gives you some information about yourself, what sort of things that you're really into, and it gives you a percentage around what you're into. And you might find some interesting discoveries, and I would take the entire test. Okay, so there's options there that say, leave out questions around submission or leave out questions about domination. I wouldn't do that. I would take the entire quiz, because you might find out that maybe you've got a little bit of submission in you, or more than you expected. And it's not about being oh, well, shit, that means I'm not blah, blah, blah. What it means is that you are coming to an understanding about the truth of yourself. And the best thing in life is to live authentically. Okay, so it's all right if you have an enjoyment. It doesn't have to be a huge kink of yours, but let's say hey, from time to time you like to get tied up. That's not that big of a deal, right? And then but the majority of the time you don't. It doesn't mean you're asubmissive. It just means you're into that sensation. You're into that the psychological effects of that. All right. It doesn't mean you're broken or weird or anything like that. Seriously, there is no weird in the BDSM lifestyle. And typically no one's going to judge you. The only people that do judge are the people who don't know about it. They don't have enough information. They don't understand it on a deep and profound level. And they're just oh, that's fucked up. Okay. So the truth of the matter is that fucked up people are in all areas of life. Okay. What, you think people in vanilla relationships aren't fucked up? I mean, that's where the most spouse on spouse murders and violence happen. Okay. That's where the most shit happens. All right. That's where the most infidelity happens. That's where the most murder happens. That's where the most domestic abuse happens. But the people that I know who live in alternative relationships, that doesn't go on. These are poly people, these are swingers, these are BDSM couples. They don't do that shit, right? Because the thing that I've noticed, and I'm not trying to say that, lifestyle people are better or whatever, but what I have noticed is that there's a lot more communication, way more communication, about problems. They're about, doubts, about ideas, about desires, about hopes and wishes and fears and all the shit. Okay? It's about communicating in truth and getting real with it. And I think this is the most potent advantage that people in the lifestyle have that, typically vanilla couples don't have, is that they don't discuss this stuff. They don't really come out and talk about it. And this is typically what destroys a relationship, is that things go unsaid and then they get swept under the rug, and then all kinds of passive aggressive shit happens. Like cheating is passive aggressive. It absolutely is passive aggressive because it's a symptom of something else almost all the time. It's not just like someone's like, "Ooh, that person looks good, I think I'm gonna have sex." It's not like that at all. There's always some sort of motivation, and it's usually emotional, and it's usually emotions that are unexpressed. Okay, because if there was expressed emotions, there were clear communication, and maybe difficult conversations had, there would be far less infidelity. Like, what if it's just as simple as like, "Hey, you know what? I love you, but I've been having sex with you for 20 years. I'd like to experience other people." It doesn't mean that I don't love you anymore. It just means I want to experience other people. Right? And being able to have the platform to openly talk about this without feeling judged, without being shamed, without the other person feeling like they're less than. All right. So, what I've learned is that, because of the nature of this lifestyle, it causes you to explore the self quite a bit. And you sometimes come into uncomfortable truths about yourself. And it's like, well, do I have the courage or the ability to work through this? Is this person going to be supportive of me? Do I need to have a mentor? All sorts of stuff. And it's almost like there's a system where there are people who, like, mostly online, unless you're part of like a real community, like a physical community, but it's always very supportive. I don't think I've ever seen people coming out with a problem that's in their dynamic or within themselves, and then their BDSM community chastising them for it. I haven't seen it once. Not once. Now, the notion about like fucked up people, yes, there's going to be fucked up people in this lifestyle. There absolutely is. But just like there's fucked up people in all walks of life. Okay? It's not like there's like a filter in this lifestyle that prevents fucked up people from getting in here. Now, you might find the most fucked up people in this lifestyle because it does involve things like dominance and submission and masochism and sadism. And so you're going to find people who have hugely, hugely unhealthy versions of masochism. You're going to find the same with sadism. You're going to find people who just fucking loathe themselves, and they use BDSM as an outlet to express that self-loathing on a very unhealthy level. And same with the sadism. They're straight up abusers. They're straight up manipulators. And they use the lifestyle as a justification for their abusive behavior. And this is a very real thing. This is why it's a dangerous thing to be a submissive. It's a very risky thing, because in their heart, and this is the thing, like when it's, say, like a woman identifies with themselves and they go, wow, I actually do have a submissive nature, that's actually slightly cause for alarm, because it signals, because the submissive nature is, it's all vulnerability, it's all softness, it's all flow, and it flourishes the most when it's in an environment of trust and protection. That's when a submissive can be completely free, like free of themselves and free of worry and concern and, their own mental chatter. It's incredibly liberating for them. But in order to be there, it makes them very exposed, like physically, emotionally, psychologically, sexually. it exposes them to quite a bit of potential threat. So because of that, they have to learn to be like with extra vigilant, and learn really good vetting skills, and not get swept up in anything. Right. So I'm thankful that I'm not in that position, because while being a dominant does have its own set of stresses and responsibilities, I'm not jealous. I'm not wanting to be on the other side of the slash, mostly for obviously for the simple fact that I don't identify that way. It doesn't resonate with me at all. But even if it did, I would be really, really cautious, because I know the potential for physical, mental, emotional, and sexual harm is quite great. And because there's so many stories of submissives just getting wrapped up with the wrong person, the wrong dominant, who's not actually a dominant. They're just an abuser in the skin, wearing the skins of a dominant. And that's the reality of it. So, in order to prevent this, I don't teach just about anyone who will pay me, right? This is partially why I've got a high paywall. And I vet the people who come to me for information, because I'm not going to teach it to just about anyone. You have to have a strong moral compass. If I get the sense that you have, a violent streak in you, or any sort of maliciousness towards women, I will not teach you. You will not get this information, because you're likely to use it for nefarious means, for destructive means. And I don't want to have that responsibility on my shoulders, right? Because that if I catch wind of it, it'll I'll feel awful. Even though they're the decisions of another person, I knew. I got the sense that there was something off about them, and I taught them anyways, just because they were willing to pay me. Okay? So it's really important that the people getting this are not screwed up. Okay. And that's just the best that I can do for the community. But I'm only one guy. But anyways, I'm hoping that this was useful information for you guys. You really can't rush into this stuff. It's stuff that you have to approach with patience, an open mind, relaxed. Okay. If you're guided by your impulses, and if you're guided by this desire for, fulfilling those impulses, you're really not going to get it. You're really not. It's going to be hard to navigate these things, because you're going to be overwhelmed, especially if you've never really come across somebody who is genuinely submissive and open. You're not going to be able to control your desire to consume. And this is not the way. The way comes from having self-control. So, as you may have heard, in order to dominate, you have to dominate yourself first. In order to lead, you have to lead yourself first. And that's really where it begins. So, that's to Tristan and anybody else who is starting out on this path. It's a path of, if anything, mental discipline. And this can extend into physical discipline, but doesn't necessarily have to. But you absolutely have to have mental discipline. Because things will happen, and the other will look to you as a place of guidance, as a place of reassurance that things are not getting out of control. And this is especially the case if you start having, say, a mixed romantic relationship while also in a DS dynamic. They will be looking to you for that reassurance, that the confidence that everything's all right. Okay. So, take that to heart. This isn't something to just play around with. All right. And that's the dynamic. Kinky stuff, yeah, you can play around with that all day long. Okay. But, just because you've got some toys and some cuffs and a gag, that doesn't mean that you have a dynamic. Okay. You can have a dynamic with nothing, Absolutely nothing. Not a single toy. Absolutely nothing. Just you and that other person. Because essentially, that's all that's necessary. All that other stuff is just fun, right? It's just a fun way to express these things. But you don't need it. It's not essential. What's essential is you. It's your mind and your heart and where these things are. This is the correct way. You know, they say there's like this adage, like no one true way. And when you get into the details of like, you know, how one plays and the reasons behind it and all that stuff, it's true. There is no one true way. But I would say that there is a true way when it comes to doing things for the right reason. I mean, unless you're a sociopath, you know the difference between right and wrong. You know the difference between having integrity and not having integrity. This should be on the forefront of your choices, the forefront of your words, your actions. Okay? And this sets the tone. So when you're just starting out, you're starting off a dynamic, the tone must be correct. Right? Picasso, he had this famous phrase. He said the outcome of every painting is determined by the first stroke. All right? So if you come out the gates all hungry, well, that's the first stroke. And it's hard to change these things. So start off with the mindset of, say, being a teacher or a professor, okay? And, and assessing whether you want to take on this student, right? And this is if you're in the position where, like, you have some knowledge and they don't, okay? It's perfectly fine. Like I said before, if you've got two people who are green and saying, hey, let's do this together. And that's a lot of fun too. It can be a very enjoyable process because it gives you something to like constantly come back and put your heads together and say, oh, like, look at what I discovered. Look at what I discovered. You kind of share notes and it becomes a very enriching process where the two of you get to just kind of come up together and explore this thing uniquely. And, and you can bring these things up and, just asking simple questions, right? And it can be like the simple fun stuff, like, hey, have you ever been spanked before? Are you into that sort of thing? And casting no judgment, right? And just having an open-minded sort of conversation. This is the best thing to do. If you're bridging these new conversations, just come at it with a non-judgmental tone, a non-judgmental attitude. And an open mind and having an open dialogue. And you can just ask about like the simple stuff, right? It's like, well, you have like, what'd you think about that? What was your experience? Did you enjoy it? Like, a lot or a little bit? Did it really turn you on or was it kind of so-so? And just get into the conversations, right? Now, if you've got a problem, like a lot of guys do, about talking about, someone's past, and you get butthurt, you're like, I don't want to hear about that stuff. Like, that's talking about other people. And it makes you uncomfortable that this person has had experiences before they've met you. Well, you're not going to do very well in this. DS aside, you're not going to do very well with women, period. So, like, if you have that issue, figure that out. Because it's going to ruin everything for you. Right? The most fulfilling dynamics, whether they are vanilla or non, is when they are free. And one of the things that they're free from is judgment. All right. So it's best if you can free the situation from judgment and allow things to progress in a very holistic way. All right. Okay, I hope this was helpful for you, educational. If you guys have any questions about things, just you can shoot me an email at justin@thedominanceacademy.com, or you can just go over to my Instagram and send me a message from there. All that information there is in the description of the video. And if you want to set up a free consultation, I have that available too. It's labeled as a discovery call, and the links for that is in the chat as well. So with that, I bid you folks a good night, and I'm going to chill out. So have yourselves a great weekend. It's probably coming to the end of our or nice weather, at least here in the Northeast. For those of you who are in the South and braved the storms that were down there, I hope everybody's okay with you and your families and friends and all that good stuff. Yeah, you'll get on your feet soon, I hope. Okay, until next time, take it easy.